You're probably familiar with the Assassin's Creed games. Over the years, the series has taken us through various eras, from pirates to Vikings, and even to the time of the pharaohs. Fans have been eagerly awaiting the logical next step, the day they would announce an Assassin's Creed set in the era of Feudal Japan. And that day has finally come. Breathtaking atmosphere, stunning graphics. So stunning that Ubisoft's stock market value collapsed. But what happened? The source of this drama can be summed up in one name: Yasuke. If you're into Japanese history, you've probably heard of him. Yasuke, the Black Samurai. But before we dig into Yasuke's story, let's figure out how Ubisoft went from riding a hype train with one of its most anticipated games to issuing a public apology to the Japanese people. Yes, the story I'm about to tell you spiraled so far out of control that the Japanese ministry legit said the controversy around Assassin's Creed Shadows could spark a full-blown diplomatic incident. To understand what happened, let's first set the scene. On May 13th, 2024, Ubisoft revealed the new name of its upcoming game, Assassin's Creed Shadows. The game would be set during the era of Feudal Japan. Ninjas, samurai, ancient Japan. You can already hear the fanbase losing it. But fast forward 2 days, May 15th, they dropped the trailer, and boom, that's when the drama began. It only took a few hours for communities, especially the Asian community, to explode on social media. But I'll get back to that in a moment. The core of the controversy? Assassin's Creed has always been solid with its main characters fitting their settings. Ezio Auditore for the Italy arc, Edward Kenway in Assassin's Creed Black Flag, or Arnaud Dorian in the game set in Paris during the French Revolution. It all made sense. But this time, Ubisoft announces Yasuke, the Black Samurai, as the main character of one of the video game studio's most eagerly awaited games. And right on cue, Ubisoft was immediately criticized as woke, a trend that has sparked heated debate and confusion among longtime fans. So what's the actual issue? On paper, it's not that wild. Playing a foreigner in feudal Japan might give players the opportunity to identify with Yasuke as he navigates this world. I mean, it's a video game. We're here to have fun, right? There shouldn't be any issue with presenting a fresh, original perspective, yet that's precisely where the problem lies. Beyond the whole wokeness debate, there's a second controversy that popped up, this time in the Japanese community. Ubisoft kinda shot themselves in the foot by overhyping their game as the first time you get to play a historical figure in the franchise. Many pointed out that Ubisoft really leaned into the idea that this new Assassin's Creed Shadows was based on real events. A quick visit to the Assassin's Creed Shadows website reveals the tagline, "Become a legendary samurai," with Yasuke prominently featured. Ubisoft even went all in, doing interviews in Japan to promote the game. But hold up, Yasuke, a real historical figure with very little documentation. Was he even really a samurai? That's a whole can of worms, but we'll get back to that in a bit. The main problem for the Japanese community, Ubisoft was pushing this narrative of historical accuracy while the game is basically a work of fiction. And yes, my friends, you don't mess with Japanese culture. As rich and fascinating as it is also deeply significant and cherished by the Japanese people. And then came the real hammer blow for the Japanese community. During an interview, the game's director, Charles Benoit, said that Assassin's Creed is famous for its historical reconstructions and faithful world building. He even doubled down, saying, "That's what players can expect with Assassin's Creed Shadows. We showcase real historical figures, such as Oda Nobunaga, and many events that took place during that time. So you're not just playing in feudal Japan, you'll also learn more about this historical period." Ouch. Now, sure, it's supposed to be fiction, but when you start throwing around claims about historical accuracy, it gets dicey, especially when a bunch of younger players are gonna dive in, probably not even questioning if what they're seeing is legit or not. Suddenly, you're risking people taking the game's storyline as actual fact, jeopardizing the true history of Japan. A history that's not just old facts, but something deeply tied to the identity of its people. That's the real problem for the Japanese community. Ubisoft's aggressive marketing, hyping up historical authenticity, could be feeding false info to kids in Japan. And, well, that's messing with the truth of their culture. So why did Ubisoft decide to issue a press release apologizing to the Japanese people? Well, things went way beyond Twitter drama. This scandal reached the Japanese parliament, the National Diet. Yep, you heard that right. Some politicians reportedly stated that the game could lead to a diplomatic incident. Why? Because of how badly it misrepresented Japanese history, culture, and aesthetics, with Yasuke being at the center of it all, portrayed as some legendary samurai. But wait, it gets wilder. The Brazilian embassy in Japan even publicly announced on Facebook that Yasuke was the first black samurai in Japan, who later became a hero of the country. Spoiler alert, that's straight up false, as we'll dig into soon. The fact that a Brazilian embassy was spreading this misinformation only added fuel to the fire, reinforcing the Japanese parliament's fears that the game was already spreading misinformation about Japan's past. They feared that once the game hit the shelves, it would just crank up the volume on all these historical distortions. And now, the latest word is that the game is officially under investigation. Ubisoft's in hot water, and this mess doesn't seem to be cooling down anytime soon. So what's your take on all this chaos? And be honest, are you still planning to buy Assassin's Creed Shadows after everything that's gone down? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to know. Now that you know a little more about this drama, let's rewind a bit. Who exactly is Yasuke, the guy at the center of this whole mess? The info out there is all over the place, and while he's definitely become a part of Japanese culture, the question remains, was he really a samurai, or is that just a myth? Time to break down the real story behind Yasuke. First off, the reason there's so much mystery surrounding Yasuke is because, well, we barely have any solid info on him. The only historical records we've got come from a tiny window between 1579 and 1582, mostly thanks to the writings of Oda Nobunaga, one of Japan's most powerful daimyōs. Yasuke's exact origins? Still up for debate, but most historians believe he came from East Africa. One thing we know for sure is that he arrived in Japan in 1579, brought over as a slave by a Portuguese Jesuit named Alessandro Valignano, who was on a trade mission in Japan. By 1581, when Valignano headed to Kyoto to wrap up his mission, Yasuke made a strong impression. For most people in the region, it was their first time ever seeing a black person. In addition to his skin color, Yasuke also stood out due to his imposing height of 1.88 meters, towering over the average Japanese, making him look like a giant. Yasuke's presence created such a stir in Kyoto that it even caused a crowd to form in the city, which eventually caught the attention of Oda Nobunaga, the local ruler. When Nobunaga finally met Yasuke face to face, he was just as shocked as everyone else. In fact, he was so skeptical that he ordered Yasuke's skin to be scrubbed vigorously, just to make sure it wasn't painted. Once convinced, Nobunaga became fascinated with Yasuke's towering height and brute strength, even noting in his writings that Yasuke had the power of 10 men. That fascination led to Valignano gifting Yasuke to Nobunaga, and it was at that moment Yasuke was given his new name. But what happened next? Did Yasuke really rise through the ranks to become a powerful and legendary samurai like in Assassin's Creed? Well, not exactly. Let's clear that up. According to historians, while Yasuke was given a Koshigatana, this didn't automatically make him a warrior, let alone a full-fledged samurai. In fact, the term samurai wasn't even clearly defined back then. There was a prestigious warrior class that closely resembled it, but in that era, they were referred to as bushi, not samurai. Based on the available writings and knowledge of the period, historians believe it's unlikely that Yasuke was even a real fighter. He probably didn't undergo the intense warrior training that elite Japanese fighters experienced, and his sword was more of an accessory than a true defensive weapon. Plus, Yasuke only spent a few months alongside Nobunaga, which wouldn't have been enough time to mold him into one of the daimyo's elite warriors. So while Yasuke was part of the warrior aristocracy that later came to be known as samurai, was he considered a true samurai during his time? The answer is no. However, Yasuke wasn't just some random servant. He was appointed as a weapon bearer by Oda Nobunaga, which was actually a big deal. This role placed Yasuke in Nobunaga's inner circle as a hatamoto, a direct vassal of the daimyo. That's a prestigious position, giving him influence and status, even if he wasn't the sword-swinging warrior legend Assassin's Creed makes him out to be. But on June 21st, 1582, the story takes a dark turn. Nobunaga was betrayed by one of his own generals during the infamous attack at Honnoji. Instead of facing capture, Nobunaga chose to commit seppuku, the ritual suicide. And just like that, the historical records on Yasuke hit a dead end. No one knows for sure what happened to him. Some historians think Yasuke might have fought against a traitor and died in battle. Others speculate that he was captured, then released, or maybe even managed to escape during the chaos. But honestly, it's all just theories, because solid facts from that time are scarce. What we do know is this: Yasuke was far from the legendary samurai depicted by Ubisoft in Assassin's Creed Shadows. Nonetheless, Yasuke's story is still remarkable. A black slave who became a man of importance alongside one of Japan's most powerful daimyō. So what do you think of the whole controversy? Does it change your view of the game or Yasuke's legacy? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And as always, I'll catch you in the next video.